Joanna, an activist and organiser of Earthlings Experience London. I've been vegan for many years, an activist for as long, and I'm troubled by divisions in the movement. For the purpose of this talk only, I use the terms non-human animals and animals interchangeably, not to otherwise or diminish them, but to clarify that I am referring to animals who are not human, while fully recognising their equal moral value. Speech time is limited, so I have narrowed my focus and narrowed it again. I'll speak broadly about the abolitionist message, versus the welfarist message, share concerns about mixed messages, touch very briefly on language, and end with a question. As vegan animal rights activists, we must strive to amplify the voices of those beings used and killed by humans, and to make clear why every single one of those uses and killings is morally indefensible. We must hold an unapologetically abolitionist position. We must assert that every animal is a rights bearer, possessing inherent moral value and a fundamental right not to be used or treated as property. We must never argue for welfare reforms or promote utilitarian ideals. Instead, we must hold pre-vegans to account, get them to recognise and end their own complicity in the exploitation of non-human animals by confronting and dismantling the constructive belief that animals exist for human use. Seeking an end to injustice means we must be willing to make moral judgments. We can say certain actions are unjustifiable, and yes, we can be purist, because when it comes to human social justice, we already are. The same moral clarity must apply here. Like humans, every non-human animal has an interest in continuing to live. What we say is not our message alone, but an echo of theirs, carried into a world that continues to turn away. We must never walk into a conversation thinking the using of non-human animals won't end in my lifetime, because it seeps into our words. The urgency fades, and listeners can feel no personal responsibility. They simply assume change won't arrive in their lifetime either, so what's the point? Yes, of course we must be realistic about the scale of what we're doing, but we're up against centuries of conditioning and deep-seated self-interest. We are, by definition, re-educators, and we will seem extreme or weird to many, so be it. Every great justice movement began with a principled minority refusing to compromise. Our commitment must not depend on comfort or convenience. We must hold the ethical line, steadfast and uncompromising. We must never soften the truth, because what's right doesn't change. It's disheartening when vegan activists frame discussions of animal use in terms of abuse, suffering, harm, violence or cruelty, rather than confronting their roots. They might spark dialogue, but they usually guide public towards thinking about certain treatments or favoured species. They do not challenge the belief that non-human animals exist for humans. In many eyes, some species are simply givers of their bodies and their lives, while humans are the entitled receivers. Most measure abuse, cruelty and suffering in degrees, with many degrees deemed acceptable, and simply the way things are. But if, like us, pre-vegans accept that non-human animals are sentient, that they matter morally, then they should not deny that they possess the inherent right not to be used for any purpose. We sometimes forget that compassion for non-human animals isn't universal. Some people simply don't like them. Yet liking isn't required to grasp a basic truth. Every being, whatever their species, possesses moral value. Liking isn't necessary to understand that animals are rights bearers. Even some vegans aren't fond of animals. Compassion, while welcome, is not the cornerstone of veganism. Justice is. So our message must stay both consistent and clear, framed in language people can follow, and we must be as committed to listening as we are to speaking. Only by understanding why someone agrees with animal exploitation can it be challenged. I often hear words that reinforce the idea that non-human animals are objects. Pre-vegans use them constantly, and even accidentally, some vegans slip back into the same conditioned language. I've occasionally heard vegans defend calling non-human animals it by pointing out that some people use it for a human fetus. That comparison simply doesn't hold. A newborn baby should not be referred to it either. When we label non-human animals as its, that's, or somethings, we make it easier to forget that they are not things. If not he or she, then say they, them, or their as the default. Referring to non-human animals as someone's or somebody's, not somethings, helps pre-vegans start seeing them as individuals rather than things, objects, and commodities. The current norms prop up industries built on non-human animal exploitation. They can and must be broken. Likewise, say flesh or animals instead of meat. We all have flesh, whereas meat is product-led language. Words matter, and small shifts like these challenge an ingrained view. Social norms change only when enough people practice something different. English's limitations are not an excuse. Our outreach lives in the words we choose. So, when conversations focus only on footage showing consequences and symptoms of using non-human animals, we encourage public to support welfarist fixes. Ban a practice, invent a kinder one, and carry on. Shock felt, even displayed by public, often wears off, and plenty of people simply don't care anyway. Even those who recoil may only condemn the scene or scenes before them. Public saying that abuse or cruelty is awful is not the same as them recognising that all animal use is wrong. Viewers can often leave thinking I'll just buy from companies that don't do it that way. Outreach must go deeper. We need to move people beyond the symptoms and challenge the belief that animals can be used at all. Only when that belief ends can the cruelty, abuse, suffering, harm and violence end too. Sometimes activists might stand at a fork in the road, deciding which path to follow. One path is long, more popular, because it's lined with welfare ideals and messages. It supports the use of non-human animals while offering the illusion of progress. The other path is shorter, more direct. It leads straight to the abolition of animal use. But vegan supporters of welfare campaigns often argue that incremental reforms aimed at better treatment or less harm pave the way to abolition. In reality, they tend to promote changes that align with economic efficiency or sustain consumer demand, thereby serving industry interests. Ultimately, such reforms act as detours, delaying the genuine pursuit of abolition. At the heart of the animal welfare position is the assumption that non-human animals do not possess an interest in continuing to live. While they may be acknowledged as having an interest in avoiding suffering, they are frequently denied moral consideration for their lives, based on claims of limited self-awareness. Imagine the uproar if we applied the same thinking to humans. As a result, welfare advocates call for better treatment, not an end to use. They reinforce and legitimise use. Every time one method is banned, industries or other exploiters quickly unveil a so-called more humane alternative, because human ingenuity ensures there's always another method ready. Business carries on uninterrupted because for them non-human animals are economic assets. The core injustice remains intact. For example, industry may simply replace the gassing of pigs with another or improved technique and market it as kinder. The pigs are still bred, confined and killed. Let's be honest, vegans campaigning for welfare tweaks or changes to treatment while claiming they're trying to end exploitation and killing sends mixed messages that stall abolition by helping exploiters keep the system alive. Suppose there are 2,000 abolitionists and 3,000 welfarists. Realistically, there are far more welfarists than abolitionists. If half of those 2,000 abolitionists also support welfare reform campaigns, the number of people promoting welfare message rises to 4,000, while the number promoting abolitionism remains the same. The result? The abolitionist message is diluted. Instead, if we consistently demanded abolition only, industries and other exploiters would scramble to polish welfare standards anyway, just to retain customers. Those reforms would then happen quickly and in spite of us, and we would keep our message clear. Let's not confuse the public. Public tunes out when the target keeps shifting. There are 2 centuries worth of evidence. 200 years of welfare reform has propped up animal use. easing consumers' consciences and keeping the machinery turning. Each humane label, RSPCA assured or whatever comes next, something will, reassures the consumer. I'm not here to attack other vegan activists. I scrutinise my own activism more than anyone's. My concern is clarity. Let's be sure we never even inadvertently bolster the very industries we aim to end. When an event centres on cruelty, suffering, abuse, harm, violence or better welfare fixes, the abolitionist message is easily diluted or completely drowned out. So let's resolve that by all of us keeping the spotlight firmly on our real goal. If our fight were for the inherent rights of humans, we would go harder and faster. Right now, some in the vegan community are resisting abolitionist only approach because they want quick, visible wins to end very specific cruelty and suffering. Some argue that times are changing, so our fight must change too, and that better welfare is the only realistic goal. But why would we prop up the very industries we oppose and let pre-vegans feel comfortable with supposed kinder choices? Progress won't be instant, but a united, crystal clear message would move us faster than any number of welfare tweets. Progress stalls whenever welfare reforms keep demand high. Division only weakens us. Let's keep the focus where it belongs. No vegan wants to see, hear or feel that animals are still suffering. When our outreach focuses primarily on suffering and cruelty amplified by graphic images, it often leads pre-vegans to only make temporary changes. For instance, adopting a plant diet, ditching fur and boycotting horse racing. Many then call themselves vegans until it no longer suits them, diluting the meaning of the word. Why? Because they were led to believe that veganism is about diet or environment and reducing suffering in ways that make them feel better about themselves, rather than by ending all use and exploitation of non-human animals. The utilitarian slogan, saving a few is better than nothing, isn't helpful either. That mindset shrinks veganism to human convenience and treats non-human animals as numbers on a ledger. Our message must stay clear. Using animals is wrong. No amount is acceptable. Does every activist need to have seen graphic footage? No. You need a commitment to pressing simple, powerful truths, including that all sentient beings matter morally. Every animal is a rights bearer. Every animal is a subject of a life with an inherent interest in continuing to live. We have no need to use animals. No religion or culture forbids veganism. Let's ensure that our core message always remains the same. A common misconception is that we must compare non-human animal intelligence to that of humans in order to justify basic rights. But a pig isn't a rights bearer because they're considered as smart as a toddler or smarter than a dog. They're a rights bearer because they're a someone. Intelligence comparisons keep humans as the yardstick and uphold constructed hierarchies of moral worth. But we live in a binary world when it comes to moral value. Someone either has moral value, something does not. Similarly, you're either vegan or you're not. There are no degrees. Non-human animals are not things, yet we claim them as property. We once did the same to humans, treating them as objects, denying their moral value and using them as resources. We continue this injustice with non-human animals, despite knowing they too are sentient beings. Let's welcome newer vegans and help guide them towards a clear ethical stance. New vegans can dive into activism through the most visible social campaigns. Unfortunately, those can often be welfare focused, reinforcing the idea that veganism is about reducing suffering. Let's make sure our education and outreach not only invite newer vegans in, but also ground them in a clear abolitionist stance from the start. How newer vegan is to activism isn't what matters. Approach is. Let's make the abolition of using animals the unmistakable theme. Organisers of abolitionist outreach may come across as bossy. We're not. It's just that popularity isn't our goal. Effectiveness is. We simply refuse to promote anything that reinforces the idea that non-human animals exist for human use. We host events because we want to dismantle that idea. Unfortunately, attendance can dip if we refuse to sugarcoat the message, and some well-meaning advisors can urge exactly that. Cupcakes, health or environment talks, baby step pledges, even reward schemes. Those tactics fit a diet fad or a welfare campaign, not an abolitionist action. What actually helps? sharing volunteers by encouraging activists to rotate through smaller outreaches, keeping the focus, no health pitches, no gradualism, centre every effort on ending use, respecting organisers by offering constructive help rather than showing up only to critique then disappear. Abolitionist grassroots or branded events, we're all volunteers aiming at the same goal. Let's act like one movement and give every team the backing it needs to reach the public. But let's never treat the end of an event as the end of our outreach until the next one. We must re-educate whenever and wherever we can. Educate the public on animal rights, the inherent rights of all species, not just a few. Animal rights, not welfare rights. It's vital for us as a movement to be absolutely clear about what we mean by animal rights. Health advice has absolutely no place in our outreach conversations, even if we believe we are experts on another's health. If a free vegan insists, politely direct them to, for instance, nutritionfacts.org, then immediately bring the dialogue back to ethics. And let's not congratulate the baby steppers. We'd never celebrate being somewhat anti-racist. We shouldn't celebrate partial exploitation either. Let's stop framing veganism as a way for humans to feel better about themselves. Our fight would also be easier if we didn't share or praise social media posts that push welfareism, utilitarianism, or the sometimes vegan. No more mixed messages or signals. Let's keep veganism focused on animal liberation, not on welfare, not on celebrities, not on health fads, the environment, or partial progress. Moral value demands we end oppression, not modify it. I wish there were time to address much more, but there isn't. So thanks very much for listening, and I'll leave you with this. Will you settle for illusions of progress, or rise up and demand abolition?